But you brought up Tom. I want to ask you a little bit about Tom because you were with him. So you had a double stint in New England, right? You were there in 99 to 2002,
Yeah.
and 99 you were a college scout,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
did you scout Tom to be drafted in the 6th round, or how'd that unfold?
I was the fully responsible for him becoming a. I'm joking. I, I was a Southeast scout. He obviously played at Michigan. I didn't watch any tape. I was focused on my area.
Uh-huh.
I heard the talks during the draft meetings and all that kind of stuff. I know that Bill and Scott Pioli was the personnel director, and Bobby Greer actually was the vice president player personnel during the draft, and then he left after the draft. And he had Michigan ties, and so a lot of positive things about him. And I know that Bill ended up putting him on the board, Bill and Scott, like basically in that second, third round area, but we didn't need a quarterback at the time. Right. And then he was like staring at him in the face in the 6th round, so he took him. But he did, his credit, he had him very high for all of the things that Tom is. He knew about that.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't know if he knew that he was going to be a Hall of Fame, first ballot, quarterback. But.
Right. That's so interesting because obviously come full circle, he ends his career in Tampa, and I think that's one thing that I've always been curious about because, Tom came down to Tampa. I went up to New England. I didn't play for New England. You guys won the Super Bowl that year, and I feel like I've heard so many guys that I played with talk about how he elevated the locker room, how he, guys were, Tristan has told me this before. He's like, I'm going to play my best fucking football. I'm blocking for Tom Brady, stuff like that. And it's always curious to me because I'm wondering, does that ripple effect, go into other areas of the building as well? The front office, did he elevate, to bring him into the building, elevate the front office as well?
He absolutely did because it was like watching, it was kind of like watching Babe Ruth in his final years, the legend, and didn't know how long he was going to be there. So I didn't want to let him down. I wanted to put attempt to get put the best team around him as possible. And didn't want to let him down. And then there's been stories about what I had John Spytek and Rob McCartney meet with him on a weekly basis over our opponent, and that elevated they put a lot of time into this, so Tom knew everything about the opponent. And then, he elevated the social media game. He elevated, the business
science.
side, sports science, ticketing. He elevated everybody. So, and we're still feeling the ripple effects. We still talk about, it hasn't been that long. We tell the rookies that they always ask, most of them ask, what was Tom like? And then we kind of go into stories out that you wouldn't believe how hard he worked. Just didn't just happen by accident.
He set the standard for everyone in the building, whether it was players to, personnel staff and everything like that. Did that teach you stuff about like evaluating and developing quarterbacks too, or is he just kind of a one-off freak Hall of Famer?
A little bit. We would talk on a daily basis all the time about different quarterbacks and what it takes. Because I'd like to get inside his head as much as I could, and then we formed a really strong relationship. We talk to this day. We text all the time, not all the time, but often. And so I don't know. He's just a cool person to talk to, getting his side of things. He's kind of like a lot of ways like Belichick, and Bill I know you weren't there a long time, but Bill has just a way of simplifying it to the core, and you're like, well, shoot, you're almost upset that you're disappointed. You thought that there'd be some long, drawn-out reason why you do things. It's like, no, this is why, and you're like, oh, okay.
No, that was my biggest takeaway, and I was on IR when I was in New England, and it was COVID pandemic year. Everything shut down, so I was just like, I'm going to sit here and be a fly on the wall, absorb all this information. And what you said is so true. I would sit in those meetings, and he has this way of breaking down football and making it seem so simple and straightforward, but in ways that you don't have the experience or knowledge to do.
You overlook, yeah.
Yeah, and it was such a great learning opportunity for me. And so that's actually another thing I would ask you is because you've been doing this for a long time with Don Shula, Jimmy Johnson, with Bill, with Andy Reid, with BA, all these great coaches. And Andy Reid and Bill are probably two of the best to ever do it. Are there kind of unifying universal traits that you've noticed watching these coaches? And is there like one or two things that all these guys do, or are each of them kind of they're independent guys who have their own process?
They're all a little different, but one thing I talked about this recently a couple times, interviews. One thing that they have in common, and I think it's a very strong trait for a coach, is that they don't have, the sky is never falling. Like if you're on a losing streak, they stay the same. If you're out 4 starters for your big game against your division rival, it's not, we're going to lose for sure. It's, all right, let's get these guys ready. That's what we got to coach them. We got to make some adjustments, and we got to do this. And this isn't going to stop us from, doing what we're doing. And, it's that they're all like this, because I've seen the opposite. And then that mentality then is a ripple effect into the locker room, because you guys as players can see that, can sense that when you can sense and smell it that there's fear,
Yeah,
so
you get a little uneasy as a player when your coach is freaking out, But when you have that kind of confidence, when you're an elite coach, like what you're saying, like there's just this calm confidence that kind of permeates through the locker room as well.
Like BA was awesome. We would meet on Thursday afternoons. It was like our weekly. We'd go have beers, all right, and or drinks, whatever. He would drink Captain and Coke, and Captain Diet. He said that's what I drink when I'm not drinking. And so he would. I would say, it looks like Mike's going to be out this game. He's like, all right, babe, we'll be fine. Cool, babe. Like, well, the young guys got to get ready. I mean, it's just, it makes me feel good.